In this webinar, we will provide 10 recommendations that secondary educators and staff who support high school transition can take to prepare Hispanic and Latino students with ASD for post-secondary education success. Let's begin with some statistics. Across Florida's high schools, the percentage of students with ASD who are Hispanic and Latino rose from 29% to 33% over the last 5 years. Students with ASD are increasingly pursuing post-secondary education that will improve their earning potential, and we need to provide them the best foundation possible by making sure they have the skills needed to succeed before they leave high school. How do we accomplish this? Let's look at our recommendations. First, we need to make sure people understand the importance of appropriate ESE eligibility. Based on the fall 2019-20 FTE count, the overall rate of ASD within our high school population was 1.3%. Recent data from the CDC estimates the ASD prevalence rate at 1 in 54, which would mean the overall rate within the high school population should be 1.9%. So it appears that we have some underidentification or misidentification of our Hispanic and Latino students with ASD, which is a potential barrier to them receiving the appropriate supports and services needed to transition to post-secondary education programs. Some students with ASD are served under other eligibilities, and some may not require an IEP or have a 504 plan. IEP teams and guidance counselors need to be aware of the core challenges of students with ASD and make sure that skills are targeted in transition IEPs and courses selected to address these challenges that will impede post-secondary success. For students served under the other health-impaired, emotional and behavior disorder, or intellectual disability categories, we recommend reconsidering ASD eligibility prior to entering high school, or in 9th grade, to help the team and student think about evidence-based practices and supports that are effective for students with ASD. Once properly identified, we will be better able to address the core challenges that impact students with ASD. ASD is the result of innate brain differences that cause difficulty in 3 main areas of function: social skills and social communication, interests and behaviors, sensory processing. These challenges can be exacerbated by over-accommodation or protectively sheltering the student from natural consequences. Encouraging pursuit of academic coursework without attention to core challenges or failing to engage the student with curriculum to address those areas can also make later success more difficult. Because these areas are not specifically academic in content, students often don't receive instruction in strategies to address these challenges, especially if they participate primarily in general education courses. The core difficulties have a secondary impact on skills and processes needed for post-secondary education success, including theory of mind, central coherence, and executive functioning. These are some of the less understood neurological processes that are critical for post-secondary education success. While skills based on these processes develop without much explicit teaching for most students with ASD don't learn them without direct instruction. Since these terms are often less familiar to educators, let's look at what they mean and how they impact the student. Central coherence is the ability to synthesize information or to see the big picture and make use of context in determining meaning. It is needed for problem solving, teamwork, and applying information in novel situations. When someone can't see the forest for the trees, we say they have central coherence problems. Being hyper-focused on rules that they can rely on, tattling on rule breakers, and black and white thinking that leads to inflexibility for considering different options, actions, or opinions are all behaviors that stem from central coherence problems. Taking things very literally, having difficulty going beyond surface language to interpret intention, or missing implied meaning in the language of others can also result from this. Getting caught up in the fine details of assignments or discussions, or perseverating on a topic, issue, or interest are also signs of central coherence problems. Central coherence problems can cause students to resist suggested revisions or always want to work on their own instead of in a group. Theory of mind skills help you to understand that your own knowledge base and perception is different from people around you. They also help you to be aware of your own thoughts and to use communication feedback to evaluate the effects of your behavior on other people. Good theory of mind allows those of us without ASD to easily recognize emotions of others and anticipate what they will do in certain situations. Difficulties in this area may show up at school, such as making tangential or inappropriate comments in class, or asking questions too frequently, or even appearing argumentative about an issue. Students may not follow unstated social rules in conversation. They may be unresponsive to suggestions or subtle hints, or not know when to stop. Theory of mind difficulties lead students to have trouble understanding that others have a different perspective, or even different knowledge of a situation than they have. This can lead students with ASD to launch into discussions based on presumed knowledge, which can leave peers and adults perplexed. When others don't respond as expected or look confused, students with theory of mind problems may become frustrated or have unexpected or disproportionate reactions to the situation. Theory of mind difficulties also lead students with ASD to fail to disclose their disability and self-advocate. Research indicates students with ASD often fail to make use of disability resource centers in post-secondary programs or to seek help through office hours. Being unaware of how you and others think, how these core neurological challenges can create social and academic struggles, and how to advocate for strategies to work around these challenges can result in stress in post-secondary programs and even interfere with successful program completion. Students with ASD can be taught about these processes and instructed in strategies to use to compensate for their challenges in these areas. But if students are not provided with coaching, instruction, and feedback on these issues, they won't be prepared to successfully participate in post-secondary education or work in a competitive employment setting. So it's critically important that these areas are addressed before they leave high school. Executive functioning refers to a set of cognitive skills needed to regulate thinking and goal-directed behavior. It includes attentional control, working memory, cognitive flexibility, alertness, and managing emotions. When students have executive functioning problems, we see this in classrooms as problems with organization and planning, rigidity, sticking to certain rituals, and preference for the known. The student may be anxious about the unknown or changes in schedules or expectations and show limited interest in trying new or different ways of approaching a problem. They may shut down in stressful or overstimulating environments. They may become overwhelmed with large projects and lack skills to break them down to manageable steps. They may get stuck on a certain problem or spend a disproportionate amount of time on something that minimally affects their grades, and then run out of time to complete an assignment that was associated with the majority of the grade. Students may fail to turn in work on time, even though they've completed it. Research suggests that for students with ASD, executive functioning problems are among the most significant challenges to post-secondary education completion and success. While these challenges are often noted as problem areas in IEPs, our research showed that the students felt they were just expected to magically develop these skills. These are not skills that will develop naturally in students with ASD. They must be taught. Training in specific attack strategies such as dissecting an assignment, programming electronic prompts to stay on a timeline, backfilling a quarter calendar to make projects manageable, estimating time and allocating time properly to stay on track, and systems to turn in work completed all need to be targeted across classes in high school. Ideally, students will be directly instructed in skills, and then those skills will be supported and generalized in whatever academic and extracurricular settings the student participates in. Students often reported teachers did not support the plans that have been prepared by their ESE team to provide incentives for the use of executive functioning skills. It is critical that the entire school team participate in supporting development of these skills. IEP teams should discuss by whom, where, and when these skills will be taught and reinforced. We know that self-advocacy skills are linked to post-secondary education success, but we also know that certain aspects of Hispanic and Latino culture may interfere with recognizing this fact. Educators need to tactfully share research on the importance of self-advocacy skills with families and students and provide self-advocacy training for the students, since the need for this skill is downplayed in many Hispanic and Latino cultures. Self-awareness is an important skill that supports self-advocacy. The ability to assess one's own skills, aptitudes, and challenges, and understanding how ASD affects you as an individual and what accommodations you need, are skills that are not pre-programmed into the standard 24-credit high school program. The intersection of theory of mind challenges in ASD and Hispanic culture creates a barrier to developing self-awareness and self-determination for many Hispanic and Latino students with ASD. These skills may not be developed in teens in Hispanic and Latino families because of the strong advocacy of the Mujeres Fuertes and the tendency to avoid talking about disabilities within the culture. The students may not really be aware of their disability and may not have had the opportunity to demonstrate self-determination. While respecting this cultural tradition and form of social capital, we need to work with both the family and the student to help the student master self-awareness and self-determination before entering post-secondary education programs. Students need to build a realistic self-assessment of their strengths and challenges and be able to articulate the support they need to be successful. Embedding these skills into standard curriculum or building time into schedules to address them in electives or independent study may be necessary. There are a variety of stakeholders that can be leveraged to support achieving these self-determination, self-awareness, and self-advocacy skills. Vocational rehabilitation, CARD, the Centers for Independent Living, the Agency for Persons with Disabilities, employment agencies, community mental health centers, self-advocacy groups, and Hispanic family organizations may all be important supports for achieving transition goals for these students. Community agencies can supplement, or in some cases, entirely provide the instruction needed for your students. It is important to have these community supports at the TIEP table. Research has identified predictors of post-secondary success for students with ASD. These predictors are tied to evidence-based practices associated with instruction and interventions for addressing skill development. Educators can read more about the predictors and evidence-based practices on the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition website. The Center on Secondary Education for Students with Autism Spectrum Disorders identified 3 overarching non-academic skill categories as critical for post-secondary success for students with ASD. Addressing these predictors of post-secondary success will give Hispanic and Latino students with ASD the best chance to succeed in completing their programs. We encourage you to take a look at the IEPs that you have for the Hispanic and Latino students with ASD in your school to see how many of these you are addressing in your goals and benchmarks. And while it is great to have goals, you must also use evidence-based practices to address them. Fortunately, effective educational practices for students with ASD is one of the most researched areas in exceptional education. There are 27 evidence-based practices for instructing students with ASD. 7 of these have demonstrated effectiveness across 3 or more domains of skill outcomes needed in post-secondary education programs. There are even specific evidence-based practices that have been demonstrated effective in addressing the areas of need identified by the Center on Secondary Education for Students with Autism Spectrum Disorders. This slide shows just a few of the linkages that exist. To learn more, visit the websites for the AFFIRM modules and the National Clearinghouse on Autism and Effective Practices, or visit NTACT to learn more about these practices that support development in ASD critical skill areas. Some of the other supportive practices that help students with ASD in everyday classroom activities include visual supports that provide a longer-lasting record of important content, engagement opportunities that include observation and practice, and hands-on experience with concepts and skills. Along those lines, we know that attention and learning is enhanced when models are similar to the student, so incorporating demonstrations that feature Hispanic and Latino youth would be another way to engage the attention of our Hispanic and Latino students with ASD. Encouraging the use of technological supports for capturing information or producing more detailed written or verbal output can improve performance and assessment results, and providing context to support the development of situation-specific behaviors is very helpful to students with ASD. This is a very brief set of common strategies that support executive functioning and central coherence. And additional free training and technical assistance on these and other evidence-based practices is available through your local Center for Autism and Related Disabilities. Our 4th recommendation is to use the social capital of feminismo to improve accessing post-secondary education. In the video about our research on the main webpage, we shared how feminismo can benefit Hispanic and Latino students with ASD. We need to recognize the social capital that these families provide that allows students with ASD to pursue education directly without worrying about other aspects of becoming an adult, and recognize that the interdependency of the Hispanic and Latino family can be a blessing for these students. We need to re-examine our prioritization on autonomy and independence as more immediately important than the benefits of pursuing post-secondary paths with the help of a strong family support system. But we must share Spanish language resources that explain the importance of addressing core ASD challenges in high school. Because Hispanic and Latino families are often reluctant to label their children, we may need to talk about ASD as a learning style difference rather than a disability, and to educate them on the benefits of disclosure and explaining aspects of ASD to their sons and daughters. Culturally, Hispanic and Latino families value confianza. They expect professionals to help them understand paths to college or technical college, and to provide information on financial and other resources that will help the family support the student's motivation and readiness to pursue post-secondary education. Person-centered planning is one way to bring in that social capital to collaborate on providing the knowledge and steps families are looking for. Among the families in our focus groups, person-centered planning tools like PATH were described as being very helpful in planning the road to post-secondary education, and these are also great mechanisms for enlisting extended family support to achieve those dreams. Florida Inclusion Network and CARD have been go-to resources for running PATH meetings, and some transition IEPs have actually been developed through PATH meetings. More information on PATH and other person-centered planning tools is included in our webpage resource lists. Our research indicated several areas where information was not reaching Hispanic and Latino students and their families. We asked if they were offered any information printed in Spanish that explained options for their child to earn post-secondary credit while in high school, or printed materials that described post-high school education options in their preferred language. 63% said this did not occur. More effort to provide quality Spanish language information to families is needed. While Spanish language resources to support transition to post-secondary education aren't abundant, some excellent resources are available. We have listed some organizations and websites that have information in Spanish here, and links to these are found in our resource listing on the webpage. Providing Hispanic and Latino families with training that leads to financial literacy on post-secondary funding is also needed. 73% of parents of Hispanic and Latino students with ASD in our project said they had no idea about how to fund post-secondary education, and that nobody at their child's school had provided any information on the topic. This is an area for improvement, as parents may not even look at post-secondary education as an option for their student if they see affordability as a barrier. Other than Bright Future scholarships, knowledge of other common scholarships and post-secondary funding sources was low. Parents and students were unaware of the Florida Gold Seal Scholarship Program for students who have completed 3 classes in a CTE program and maintained a 2.0 GPA. Likewise, parents of private school students on Gardner Scholarship were unaware that these funds could be used for post-secondary education. None of the parents or students were aware of specific scholarships available to only students with ASD, and only a few could name any scholarships reserved for Hispanic and Latino students. Opportunities to plan for education savings through an ABLE account or Florida prepaid account were unfamiliar to most parents, and only 2% of families stated that high school staff told them about funding for post-secondary education that may be available through vocational rehabilitation. These findings are significant, since 70% of Florida's Hispanic and Latino families have incomes less than $50,000 per year. Because of confianza, the parents are depending on the school to provide this information. Less than a quarter of our Hispanic and Latino high school students and their parents had heard of dual enrollment. Many of those families assumed dual enrollment was for advanced academic coursework and did not know about the opportunities to take career dual enrollment. Dual enrollment may be one way for students headed to Florida's college system to reduce post-secondary education costs and spread out their post-secondary education course loads while still maintaining pace to complete their program of study in 2 or fewer years. Several of our Hispanic and Latino college students and graduates discussed that a full post-secondary course load of 12 credits was too stressful for them and had a negative impact on their GPA. Most students shared that they took only 2 classes per semester and were able to manage that well. However, there is a problem with that approach. Federal aid and VR support requires completion of post-secondary education within a specified time frame, or you lose funding. Students can also lose funding if their GPA drops too low. This catch-22 needs to be explained to parents and students before they begin post-secondary education. They may be able to ask for a reduced course load that still enables them to receive funding support. And taking some dual enrollment career or academic classes while still in high school could decrease both cost and stress at the post-secondary level. Parents and adults with ASD explained that their school organized college fair nights as the primary way to learn about post-secondary education options. They shared they didn't feel that they were effective in explaining the options, and that the environment wasn't conducive to getting a good understanding of programs and steps toward enrollment, especially as many experienced a language barrier. Adults with ASD shared that these college fairs were overwhelming to them. If these formats are not effective, we need to find other ways to engage these families and students. An alternative format, like web chats or video virtual college fairs that feature Spanish subtitles, may be something to consider. Students and parents need to be introduced to high school, college, and career center areas within guidance departments so students can visit to learn about post-secondary education programs. We also found parents are missing valuable information or under misimpressions about requirements and eligibility to enter post-secondary education in Florida. For example, 23% of families indicated a potential barrier was whether their child could pass the tests required to enter college programs. Many people were also under the misimpression that students obtaining a standard diploma on access points cannot enter the Florida college system. While many of Florida's state colleges do recommend taking the PERT or TABE testing to help them with putting supports in place, there are no cutoff scores to enter the state college system in Florida. Admission is open to any student with any type of high school diploma or a GED, and no test scores are required. Since research has shown that the majority of Hispanic and Latino students with ASD will attend a local public post-secondary education institution and live at home, it is important to highlight those local programs for these students and to build understanding of the programs of study available through the district that may translate into CTE certificates or diplomas or degree options at the Florida state colleges nearby. We shouldn't forget about universities that may have programs that meet the needs and interests of these students, including certain programs for students receiving instruction via access points, and that Florida has a number of private and public Hispanic-serving institutions that may provide additional Hispanic and Latino supports. And last but certainly not least, parents need information on post-secondary education institutions that have specific support programs for ASD. Florida has 6 specialized programs in place already for students with ASD, including one at a Hispanic-serving institution. These schools have developed ASD-specific support programs which are promoted on their websites and are beginning to attract strong interest from our families. Information on these programs can be found on the webpage resource list, and we encourage teachers, guidance counselors, and staffing specialists to become familiar with these programs and request materials to share with families. It may even be possible to have staff from these programs join in an IEP meeting via technology, or to build in objectives to investigate these programs as part of the student's transition IEP. We also have programs at Florida post-secondary education institutions for students with intellectual disabilities. Some of these students may also have ASD, so this may be a path to post-secondary education for parents of our teens to consider. The website for the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities provides a listing of Florida's programs. Financial aid and other resources are also provided. Students enrolled in approved Florida post-secondary comprehensive transition programs approved by the SCSUA can receive an annual scholarship, currently at $7,000 per year. School staff can point families of Hispanic and Latino students with ASD who may be eligible for these programs to the FCSUA website shown here. And finally, there are also ASD and intellectual disabilities supportive programs outside of Florida. The College Autism Network site has a compendium of post-secondary education institutions currently offering ASD programs within degree-bearing college programs. And Think College has a comprehensive list of programs and resources for students with intellectual disabilities. This brings us to our fifth recommendation. The cultural expectation of confianza means Hispanic and Latino parents expect all this information to be provided by the high school. Parents indicated they wanted a go-to person to be their guidepost for information and strategies to access post-secondary education. We believe designating a culturally competent bilingual Hispanic and Latino point of contact within the high school to act as an ambassador would address the information needs of Hispanic and Latino students with ASD and their families. The ambassador cannot be a last-minute staff member pulled into an IEP meeting. Those who are translating need to have the necessary understanding of district transition options, post-secondary options, IDEA, and FAPE. Based on what we've learned, we believe that it will also be necessary to include information in push technology formats, such as pop-ups on websites and cell phone pushes, to provide information on the importance of early planning, specialized programs, and available financial supports for post-secondary education. Parents would also prefer information to be pushed out to them from 9th grade or even earlier if possible. They want to be told what questions to ask post-secondary education institutions about their programs. In hindsight, many realize that having a particular talent in an area, such as art or electronics, did not naturally translate into course success in college. Many of the courses in their child's talent area also called for skills that were particular weaknesses for the student with ASD. In districts where Spanish-speaking staff members are scarce, it may be possible to designate a volunteer parent ambassador, or even a graduate who enrolled in post-secondary education who would be willing to volunteer to act as the resource. Our sixth recommendation is simple. Begin everything earlier. Information is reaching these families primarily in 11th or 12th grade. Parents want to have information available from the beginning of high school. These two quotes from parents in our focus groups illustrate their concern. In addition to sharing the resources we've already mentioned, there is a need for the students and their parents to have access to available career planning tools. The new middle grade's career planning requirement will support better informed career planning. However, it appears that students can use additional attention to these issues in 9th grade as they formalize their plan of study for high school. Parents of Hispanic and Latino students with ASD want their children to be able to support themselves, so illustrating the benefits, even at the industry certificate level, of completing high-demand career post-secondary education programs could be very helpful in having them promote these options with their children. Mi Próximo Paso, Future Quest Island, and Florida Shines are just a few of the free tools that can be explored to provide input that can be used in the transition IEP planning process. External resources may offer programs to supplement high school coursework. It would be good to provide this information or invite these agencies to IEP meetings in 9th grade. For example, students may enroll in vocational rehabilitation pre-employment transition services at age 14 and receive support for career and post-secondary exploration and self-advocacy skills. They may learn about ways that VR supports post-secondary education for high-demand career fields and employment success. Schools can assist students to register with VR for traditional or pre-employment transition services. Research has indicated another predictor of post-secondary success was participation in high school extracurricular activities. 94% of two-year college graduates with ASD had participated in extracurricular activities at their high school. Extracurriculars can be an excellent place to learn and practice group work, planning, and other theory of mind and executive functioning skills. Students with ASD typically do not sign up for clubs based on club rush or morning announcements. Research indicates that encouragement from a staff member was an integral part of the process of joining a club. And it takes knowledge of the student's interests to find the right club. In some cases, clubs were developed around the interests of a student with ASD, with some of the more appealing clubs involving anime, gaming, film, and animation. The benefits of extracurricular involvement need to be shared with Hispanic and Latino families, who often see it as the student's job to stay strongly focused on academic success to the exclusion of extracurricular activities. The Hispanic community likes to share information internally. It may be possible to recruit support from the Spanish-speaking community to talk up the paths to post-secondary education to families of incoming freshmen. Either alumni or parents of former students may be interested in serving in this volunteer role. Thinking about ways to build awareness, particularly with mothers of middle school students and ninth graders, could result in students who are better prepared to enter post-secondary education. Our next recommendation focuses on graduation paths. Although there are 7 paths to graduation for students with ASD, our research found that students pursued only 2 of them. We need to make sure that students and their parents are aware of the different diploma pathways. So, let's take a look at Florida's diploma pathways. The options you see here are open to all students. The first is the option most students without disabilities take, the standard 24-credit option with general education coursework. These are the ACE and IB options, which may be appropriate for the advanced and well-organized student with ASD. And there are 2 options where students can earn diplomas with a minimum of 18 credits instead of 24. The 18-credit Excel option and the CTE pathway, which can require as little as 18 credits. There are 3 additional 24-credit options available only for students with IEPs. The 24-credit Access Points option that provides modified academic expectations should be available to students with significant cognitive disabilities. The course codes for this diploma path are not recognized by universities, but they are accepted for enrollment in the Florida college system. The academic and employment option is open to all students with individual educational plans. This option combines academic requirements with practical knowledge obtained from employment, which may support either post-secondary education or work goals. Students must be employed in the community for at least half of an academic year, and they receive at least a half credit for completing specific outcomes through their employment, based on their TIEP goals. And there is the option of using CTE course substitutions for certain academic courses. The requirements for the CTE diploma track are unfamiliar to many, and our research indicated they are not being disseminated to our Hispanic and Latino families of students with ASD. This may be an excellent option for some of our students. Because the CTE path requires fewer credits, it allows for more flexibility, and if taken over 4 years, could result in a student obtaining better grades in core academic classes. It may also put a student on a path to earning a career certificate or industry certification while still in high school. The majority of parents and graduates in our study indicated CTE options were never shared with them. None of the parents were aware that successfully completed high school CTE coursework could be applied toward a career certificate or degree if the student entered a state college or technical college, or that the tuition for the credits obtained while still in high school would be paid for by the school district. About a third of the students said they had heard of CTE classes, but nobody ever told them about what they were. They were not sure that they would have been eligible for them or how they could have taken them. Several spoke of needing to repeat English or math coursework that took up all available space in their schedules, making it impossible to take electives or CTE coursework. We recommend that high schools provide information on CTE in 9th grade IEP meetings, and that CTE staff are invited to attend meetings when a student, parent, or educator identifies a student's interest or aptitude in one of the CTE career clusters. Course mapping tools can be provided to create a visual support that can help the family to make sure the steps on the CTE path are being completed. Sometimes this course map may result in taking longer than 4 years to accomplish the required coursework, and that is okay. Often this information is very familiar to the district transition team, but we need ESE teachers, guidance, and staffing specialists to have the information and for them to show students and parents where to access this information. In our focus groups, we also learned that high school students had never been provided with career pathway or career cluster information. In Florida, CTE is comprised of 17 career clusters. Career clusters are employment domains, for example, hospitality, manufacturing, aligned with in-demand careers. Career pathways lead toward an industry certification or licensure, or associate or bachelor's degree. FLDOE has created excellent infographics that list these clusters, secondary and post-secondary CTE programs for these clusters, and the types of jobs and salary expectations. A link to these infographics is included in the webpage resources. We need to let students know about what CTE options exist and where they're located within our districts. In our study, we also found parents were unaware of the option for students with an IEP to substitute certain CTE courses to meet academic graduation requirements. The course code directory aligns certain standard academic courses listed on this slide with specific CTE courses that may be substituted. If any alignment is found, the CTE course may substitute for the academic course. While alignments already exist for many courses, if one has not been considered, resources exist for school districts to do their own alignment assessment. If students are struggling with an upper-level academic requirement, there is probably a CTE course that could be substituted for it. Students and families should be made aware of the possibility of CTE course substitution and other CTE options as appropriate. Students may find more success in CTE substitutions rather than repeating the same general education course. In summary, there are many steps we can take to inform parents and students of the resources and options that can lead to post-secondary education success. We need to make sure that by the end of 9th grade, all students and parents understand the variety of diploma paths that exist, and we need for that information to be accessible to them in both English and Spanish. We need to carefully look at students with ASD receiving access points instruction to make sure they're not better suited to coursework toward one of the other diploma options. Finally, we need to question the wisdom of graduating students with ASD in 4 years. Because IDEA permits students with exceptional education needs to continue receiving education within the public schools to age 22, using CTE and other coursework or pre-apprenticeships to spread the required 24 credits over more than 4 years could be beneficial in several ways. It could allow students to pursue more electives or work credits and take fewer heavy academic courses simultaneously. This would allow more time to focus on homework or tutoring to do well in the academic courses, which may increase their GPA and make them eligible for CTE programs, scholarships, or dual enrollment. Students would also be able to take part in extracurriculars because the need for intensive studying and amount of homework would be reduced. Electives may help the student develop skills that can become lifelong hobbies and increase community participation and independent functioning. CTE course substitutions may better match the academic content needed for careers for students seeking to complete certificate programs and obtain occupational competencies. And finally, it may permit students who have taken exclusively general education classes to benefit from taking some access points instruction to improve their self-advocacy, executive functioning, and social-emotional skills needed for post-secondary education success. One of the options for pursuing a CTE diploma or a standard diploma with CTE substitutions might include deferring graduation. Students with individual education plans may defer graduation in order to pursue a variety of options that can lead to post-secondary education or employment. This option exists for students whose IEP requires special education, transition planning, or related services. Well, based on everything we've covered in this webinar, you're probably aware that is most students with ASD in every high school in Florida. But people cannot wait until 12th grade to come to this conclusion, or the deferment will be difficult. According to Project 10's Family Guide for Secondary Transition in Florida, planning for the deferral must take place in advance so that the correct language is in the IEP and the team has the time to choose the best program. We need to ensure students and parents are aware of the option for and benefits of deferring graduation. Work-study options are available in most districts, and pre-apprenticeship programs provide an avenue for students who are 16 years or older to become qualified to enter a registered apprenticeship program in the same trade after graduation. Additional information on these program options is included in our resource section on this webpage. And now we've come to our last recommendation, which is to collaborate with the local post-secondary education institutions to promote enrollment for Hispanic and Latino students with ASD. High schools should get specific information that explains the majors, support programs, and certificate or degree paths at local, state, and technical institutions and discuss the variety of programs, including industry certificates programs with stackable credentials within programs that may allow students to obtain an industry credential in the event they cannot finish a degree. Establishing relationships with the local post-secondary education disability resource centers can support this recommendation. We have come to the end of this webinar. We are not expecting you to walk away with a full toolkit to address these challenges, but we hope we've planted some seeds for ideas about things you can do to join us in increasing post-secondary success for Hispanic and Latino students with ASD. You are not alone on this mission. There are lots of supports out there, including state and local agencies and B's discretionary projects. All these resources are available to you and the students and their families at no cost, and they are happy to help.